Hello jet surfers, just so you know, I had a little breakdown the other day and I'm going to try and get to the bottom of it. So before I went out for my after winter run, I ran it in the garden. It was a little bit sluggish starting. I put some fuel down the car but it started fine and that was all good. I decided, right, yeah, we'll go out. So I went out, I launched off of the seafront into salt water and stuff, like as I normally do, and it started fine and I shot off and it was cooling fine, it was doing everything it should. As I roared about, I got down to sort of half a tank, so I refueled again. So I got some fresh fuel. The fresh fuel seemed to work. It was certainly a bit faster, but on the second time starting up it was a little bit sluggish. So I thought, oh, is my starter motor going? Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. So we carried on. I motored around, probably doing another half a tank, when I started jumping it in and out of the water and the waves a little bit. This time round it just conked out. It was kind of at 3/4 speed, so 20 miles an hour, and it threw me off the front. Just came to an almighty stop. So I thought, well, it's either seized up or I've got something stuck in the prop. So nothing stuck in my prop. Check that. Tried to start it, very sluggish in starting again, wouldn't start at all. So unfortunately had to walk it home this time and gave up trying to crank it over because I figured it just sounded a little bit too worse for wear. So bearing in mind, what could it be? Yes, it could be the battery under there. Could have just given up the ghost while I was going along. I have had some turn-offs while I've been motoring about in the 4 years I've had this. Could have been a carb blockage. Didn't appear to be fuel-y problem, I don't think. It just stopped like rapidly and threw me off. Didn't make any noises, didn't make any smoke, and certainly didn't burn out my exhaust or anything like that. So it brought me to thinking, is it the freewheel bearing? Everyone's always talking about this, the freewheel clutch bearing that's down here. Took this cover off already, loosened it off for you to have a look. So I might have to get into there in a minute. If it is that, I've just ordered it offline for about 30 odd pound. We'll see if it is that, but for now I'll also just show you what it starts like, and then I'll tell you more about why I think it's a freewheel bearing following someone else's YouTube video. We'll give it a start, see what it sounds like. Does its normal start, flashing there, yellow and red as I normally expect it to. Give it one more go. So, bit tricky to film it, but you'll see it's sort of starting. Obviously still turns off. So start motor might be okay. Spark plug, need to have a look at sort of colour it's exhibiting. So we'll have the spark plug out. Hopefully the compression's there. It sounds okay, the compression. And what I was alluding to, that I saw someone else talk about the freewheel bearing, is that the bearing should only go one way. So the clue for me is that my shaft goes that way, as you can see, just past the timing sensor. It also goes that way. So I think it's that bearing. We'll get it apart and have a look. Bit of a job, take the fuel tank out, I'll take the spark plug out. I'm pretty sure that's in good condition, and we'll have a look. So now I've had the chance to take the spark plug out, and that appears to be just sort of a orangey brown, burning probably at the right temperature, not too oily, not too white. So that looks okay. interestingly enough, it's a BPR7HS, which has got a bit more reach on the electrode in the middle. If you have a BP7HS, that brown centre bit isn't really sticking out that much, but the manual says it can have either, and I've been running on this for a couple of years. This one seems to be fine. So the next place we'll have a look is at the flywheel bearing. Incidentally, this is how I run my air hose to my fuel tank. Got a little connector on there, just taped hanging so it's above the fuel level of the main tank. As you can see, I just have it like that. I don't like it going up the stalk of the handset in case the water fills up. Also, I don't want it laying inside in case water goes up and it sucks into the fuel tank. So I find this is the best way to keep your air hose just above without it leaking as well, because what you don't want is fuel all in your engine bay and causing an explosion. Also, I noticed there I've lost the little grommet. That's just come off, so that needs gluing back on. Got that there in the box, so we'll put that back on with some sort of 2-pack glue. So I've took the cog off that joins the starter motor to the bigger flywheel ring gear. Took that off because that's in my way of my socket and my wrench area. So the next bit I took out was the little screw at the front where the oil goes in, and now I'm going to take that cap off. You can see a bearing in there and another Allen screw. So for me to get that big ring gear off of there, or pulley off the front with the bearing system, I'm going to take off this bar here. So I've took out 1, 2, 3, 4 bolts under there, the 2 chassis ones and the 2 on the engine. We'll have that bar out. There we go. Another little tip for you, save you some time. That big silver nut, that only holds the gear on, as I just found out when I used an enormous 41mm socket to try and undo that. I did undo it, I got it off to no avail. It doesn't help you get the freewheel bearing out. So I've put it back on, and I'm going to put a puller on there and try and pull that whole hub off. Now I know that it's safe to do so. So I've got no idea if this is going to work yet, but this is a paracord puller. Paracord's good for £300, and I didn't have a big enough or small enough puller to go and grab that wheel, so let's see what happens. I'm hoping not to damage anything. 14mm spanner on there, locked the flywheel just into the body of the block, I suppose, and it's working. It's pulling it off. Yeah, nothing went pop or crack. It's worked. I'll have it off in a minute. Yep, that's had it. So there you go. There's all the bits that came out of the JETSURF 2018 GP. Clutch bearing completely obliterated itself. Melted plastic into this one. Ruined that. Need a new seal. And need to buy a new one of them. On the whole, came out relatively easy. I ended up heating the hub, pushing the bearing out when it was almost too hot to hold the hub. It finally pushed out with a 15mm socket, which was handy, into another larger socket, just in a vise, and obviously it goes with a bit of a crack and a push, but I haven't got a press, so I did the best I could with that, and that's really it for now. And I'll get the new bits and we'll put it back together, hopefully. Anyone else got jet ski parts in their oven? Just try and heat the hub up so I can get that bearing casing out. Here's my new bearings arrived from the UK. Didn't have to buy them abroad. Front bearing, new clutch bearing, already greased, that's good. Rear seal, all ready to be pushed back in there. Here we are, clutch bearing in, rear seal in, front bearing in. Front bearing just slid in because the hub was quite warm. Clutch bearing had to be pushed in with a socket again into a larger socket. You saw that in the vise. And the rear seal's in. So hopefully that just slide on the shaft now. Obviously I had to pull it off before, that must have been really jammed on. But I tested all the bearings before and they all just slid on, so let's see. Check that out. So, spins that way. Spins that way. Locks that way, that's it. So that way it's locking, turning over the crankshaft. Nice, I can feel the compression. And then that way, just spins backwards. Cool. So in reverse, I've put the pulley back on. I've done the centre nut. Just like nipped up, you know, not too tight, otherwise you'll end up threading the inside of it. So that's done. Then the 4 chassis bolts back on. The good thing about making a video like this is that I can even refer back to it myself and see where were the washers, what bolt went where, even though I've not took off that many. So the final bit now is to get the connecting gear on, the starter gear just there, get that on and then get the cover back on. Make sure your spark plug is home fully. If that red cover's on, then that's probably that the HT lead's on fully as well, so that helps to check that you're getting good spark. So we ain't far off of starting this. I'm just gonna, can you see that rubber seal around there after it being in the oven? That's the rubber seal I took off, by the way, as well, when I dismantled the bearing. Didn't want to melt that rubber, so I've put that rubber seal back on, and then I'll screw back on the little casing once I've added a little bit of grease and a little bit of stuff to the thread on that as well. So hold fire. Okay, last bit. Little covers back on that covers that front bearing with a bit of grease in there. Little bolts back on. I had to change that little bolt because when I was taking it off, the Allen head completely rounded off. So that came out like that because I had to put a V in it to turn into a screw head. So change that little bolt. That's fine. That's a nice little short one. It's only really an oil hole. So they're all tightened up. Everything's got a bit of thread lock on it. It's worth putting a bit of that on. Not too much, but you just don't want your bolts rattling loose. And some of you might notice that I've white dotted the things that I don't want to move or come undone. And that's where we are with that. So apart from putting the gear cover on, it's ready for a test. Right, here we go. I just started it. It was a little bit sluggish. Once the fuel got going through, it started to find its own way. And we'll start it up now and you can see it all finished and fixed. Just requiring a water test and the gear cover back on. So let's have a go. That'll do me. So there we are, it's all fixed, ready for a water test. So what would I do different if I could do it again? Don't rush your Allen key bolts. If they're tight, just go easy on them, get the right bit that fits. If you do turn them, then obviously you've got to file them down and turn them into screw heads and try and get them out that way. Don't start knocking your ring gears off or bashing them about or trying to lever them, because everything's going to be bending. Things, if they're jammed, a bit like mine were with the bearings clearly didn't want it to move, so I had to make up that puller. The fabric puller, the paracord puller, worked an absolute treat. I'm happy with that, because I didn't have a mini puller. I'd have probably had to wait ages for that. Just before you go storming in and thinking about, in the piston, is things in there seized up? Have you lost compression? Have you lost your starter motor? Is your carb need adjusting? Don't start tweaking them. I'm a big fan of, if it ain't broke, don't turn it, don't twist it. I've even made a mould for these, so I know they're always in the same position because of cleaning. Sometimes with cleaning you can knock stuff. Don't start thinking it's your battery unless you're really indicating that point in that way. The freewheel bearing is the most common bit on this that goes all the time. Obviously mine's lasted about 50 hours. Maybe you should start looking at it at 25-30 hours maybe. Certainly you're meant to be oiling it at 25 hours. But this ski has really not been a bother to me. It's a 2018. It's 4 years old now. It's done 2 spark plugs, and that's only through choice, me changing them. I decided to change the spark plugs. I know a lot of the racers, they tend to change lots of bits and pieces on them, but to be honest, I'm only trying to ride it general purpose. I don't want to race. I just want it to be reliable. So I'll only fix it if it starts to break or make noises and have a look at stuff. As you can see, I keep it clean, well oiled, spray it with silicone spray. Make sure you care for your engine, dry it all out. I keep mine permanently standing up. Standing up helps drain it at the back. Obviously all the water can drain out the exhaust, and your exhaust isn't rotting because the aluminium is prone to that. Clean out your ball and spring valve every now and again, because that gets a bit gummed up with oil. If you don't, you can get your ball stuck, and then once that's stuck in the spring, that just sticks like that, and if it gets really hot, that'll melt the ball and spring and all the back end. You'll see that on the internet as well. Blow through your coolant hose. Make sure the coolant hose is all free. Big fan of getting my lips around that. Just blow down it, just blow out the back. Then squirt some silicone fluid down there. That goes straight into the block. WD, whatever you want to put in there really. WD-40 tends to congeal a bit like oil, but turn yellow. But if you can see a bit coming out down here, then you know all this gallery's free of salt water and salt water crystals. Basically, yeah, flush it well, flush it from the back, flush it from the front if you want, blow down the hole, put a hose on there, give it a good clean generally. Don't adjust too much, just keep things well greased, always ready to undo things if you have to. So if it's all well greased and ready to go and clean, obviously you've got a timing sensor on here. Hopefully nothing starts to go wrong for you there as well. Timing sensors are a pain, but there's a bearing down there, you want to keep that oiled as well. Just a bit of smear of grease around there, a bit of white grease or something like that. I've been running on for the last 4 years, no problems. In general, nothing's come loose, nothing's shook about. Yes, the water gets down there, and it's just general maintenance. So I noticed today I've got a little hole at the front there, so that's somewhere water can ingress on my snorkel. That's from my snorkel being stressed over all the time, because I have a flare hanging on the front. So not ideal to stress your snorkel, because if you're getting water in all the time, it's a lot of water in the engine bay. Obviously you've got your self bailer. The bailer right down the back gets a little bit blocked. The pickup on it, especially where I clean my hull out, the fluff and grime gets on the very bottom of that. So I've had my bailer out 3 times when it hasn't come out of here very well. If it starts going pff, pff, that's normally your bailer gauze is blocked at the bottom, so that'd be worth clearing out. It's not that hard to get out. There's a few bolts, a few clips to remove. Just don't modify too much stuff or hopefully force anything. And then you'll get that full jet where it sprays over your head and over the back of everybody. Other than that, when you're out and about, just check it's cooling well, pumping out water out of there, check that you've got no bad signals down here, you don't want any different light sequences, just be out on the green, start filling up on the purple, and you shouldn't have any problems. It's been a very good ski to me, 4 years worth of no problems. Buy once, buy new, buy what you know. I know what's happened to this ski, I know what I've done to it, and it's been very trustworthy. So thank you JetSurf, it has been a good ride, and I will continue to be now. Now I've got a new freewheel bearing, managed to get them off of the internet in the UK, so you don't have to shop about going to JetSurf and waiting for long-term deliveries and taxis and all the other stuff you have to pay the postman. So yeah, if once you get your bearings out in your hand, just Google them, see what the number is on them, measure them, double check them. Same with the rubber seals, you can find them all, and that's about it. So I'm the man behind the video. I've been making all the little tips and tricks for this. Hopefully you'll benefit from that and won't break anything, and in the future you'll have a healthy running ski all the time. But bye for me from now. Jetski Essex on Instagram, and if you like the video, definitely give it a thumbs up, maybe share it, tell all the other jet surfers out there, because not all these freewheel bearing clutches are the same. As I found, I did find one and bought the wrong size. So until you got that bearing in your hand, that's what you want to find out. Cheers.